So what we just saw in our last video was Hess's law, kind of adding these reactions together. I just added two. There could be more than two to get you a net equation, which therefore the delta H is just added up at the end. We had a positive and negative, which was subtracted. But again, it's really just adding. Now, that one worked out perfectly. There was no adjustment to either of those initial reactions to get our net. Unfortunately, sometimes reactions need to be adjusted to get the net. And let me show you what that basically deals with. It says that there are 3 rules. Realistically, there's 2 rules, and we'll look at them individually. The first says, here we are in the red here. If you multiply or divide an equation by a factor, you do the same to the delta H. If you multiply or divide by an equation by a factor, you do the same to delta H. So let's say I have an equation, 2H2 plus O2 yields 2H2O. Okay, so reaction between hydrogen and oxygen reacts to form water. And let's say the delta H, and I'm making this one up. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but let's say we have a delta H of 100 kilojoules. Okay? Now, it makes sense that if I multiply this entire equation by a factor, let's say 2, and we have 4 hydrogens, 2 oxygens, and 4 H2Os, 4 waters. Okay, so I've doubled my equation. We should double the delta H as well. So our delta H for the reaction in this situation would be 200. Okay. Obviously, you could multiply by 3, 4, 5. You can multiply by any factor, or you could divide. You could divide. Let me erase this real quick and just show you. Again, if we have that 2H2 plus O2 yields 2H2O, and our delta H for that was 100 kilojoules. If I multiply this by a factor, let's say a half, or in other words, divide by 2, 1H2, 1/2 O2. And again, we wouldn't be able to have 1/2 O2, but you'll see how this kind of can get looked at as we move forward. And then 1, so I've halved all my reaction. I would do the same to my delta H. So in this case, for this reaction, the delta H would be 50. So that's the first rule. Now the second rule, and really there's only 2 rules, you'll see the third rule is just kind of an explanation. So that's the first. The second rule is if you reverse the equation, you change the sign of delta H. So 2H2 plus your O2, and again I'm just using this equation, and let's say we have a delta H of 100 kilojoules. All right? If I reverse it, meaning these are the reactants and this is the product. Okay? If I make the 2H2O the reactant, and now the H2 and the O2 are the products, you see how basically I've gone in the opposite direction. Now my delta H is negative 100. So if you reverse an equation, you change the sign of the delta H. All right. Why would you do this? Again, why would you do the first one? The reason is you do both of those things. Multiply or divide by a factor or reverse the equation. You do that to get the net equation. You're going to be given the net equation, and then you need to see what you need to do. Multiply, divide by a factor, reverse the equation in order to get that net. You do it to get that net. So you're going to be given the net equation, and you will look at the initial equations to see what do I need to do to make that net happen. So those are the rules for Hess's law. We'll give you an example on the next set of videos.